The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning for our webinar on artificial intelligence and practical ways that we can get started, or you can get started in your business. Just a couple of housekeeping items that I'll go over in a moment. We will be recording the webinar. We'll try to keep the session to about 40 to 45 minutes, maybe a little bit less, save some room for questions. If you do have questions during the webinar, please don't hold back. You can submit them in the questions pane of the GoToWebinar panel. And again, we're recording the webinar. We'll send out the recording later this afternoon. And with me, I have Daniel Cohen and Dale Tuttle today. So Dale, if you want to just introduce yourself while we get things started.
Sure. My name is Dale Tuttle. I'm a partner here at Witham Digital. I'm here with Daniel Cohen, who's also a partner at Witham Digital. And what we'll be talking about today is practical ways to get started with some of the artificial intelligence, machine learning tools that Microsoft provides via the Azure platform. And more importantly, hopefully by the time you leave today, you'll know that these are things that can be done by pretty much any business. The tools are readily available. You'll probably need a little bit of help to get started, but that's what we're here for. But more than ever before, these very advanced tools are now at your fingertips, quite literally. Daniel, and how are you today?
We're doing well. We're doing well. Thank you, Dale. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Daniel Cohen. I'm a partner here at Witham. I have many years of experience in digital transformation. Great expertise in Office 365, SharePoint, Dynamics, and lately I've been very interested in AI and machine learning. So I've been spending a lot of time there.
I think we usually do a fun fact. So what's a fun fact, Daniel, about you?
You know, I was actually a private pilot in my early days.
Which is kind of funny because I'm trying to finish my pilot's license right now, and Daniel beat me. So the weather holds and we're going to fly tomorrow.
That's awesome.
It could be, yeah. The other fun fact about me is I'm a reformed professor, so great, long time ago.
It's great to be here. All right, so why don't we get started? A little bit of Witham Digital. We are a Microsoft consultancy here. I've been involved in the world of Microsoft for almost 17 years now.
Yeah.
We focus on Office 365, on Azure, on Dynamics, Power BI, really everything that's Microsoft Cloud related, and we've done probably over the last 6 years over 250 plus Microsoft deployments in cloud, specifically Microsoft Cloud deployments.
I think it's over 500 when you start thinking about premises, correct?
Yeah, of course, yeah. We have 4 Microsoft MVPs on staff. Those are individuals that have been vetted and certified by Microsoft to be community leaders, essentially, go out and speak at conference. Our team is about 500 people plus. That includes a lot of project manager, business analysts, data scientists, engineers, software developer, user experience designer. And we've been a Microsoft Gold partner for over 16 years. So with that, Dale, what are the agenda and the goals today? What do we expect everyone to learn from this webinar today?
Well, we'll quickly go over, what do we mean by artificial intelligence? There's a lot of terminology out there, which we'll go through in a second, but we do want to introduce people to some of these more simple concepts, and so you have a basis or a foundation, so you can have discussions around artificial intelligence and some of the tools that exist around artificial intelligence in the Azure platform. We're actually going to talk about some use cases, and more importantly, we're going to have a demonstration if it's working, right, Daniel?
Should be working.
It should be working. In fact, that's kind of the really what we're after, to show how you can use these tools and get them up and running in your own business. So when you're done, you should have a pretty good idea of what it takes to build a virtual agent or a bot, as we're going to talk about in a minute, and really actionable steps. This is how you go and do it. And this is what you get. So that's our plan. Good. All right, let's go a little bit through the terminology. You're going to find lots of different, definitions out there. But what do we mean? For artificial intelligence, the short answer is just computer systems that really mimic might be good term, but they approximate human behavior, human decision making, and sometimes you don't even. It's so good that you don't even know you might be dealing with a machine rather than a person. And machine learning is kind of a derivative or the part of AI, perhaps. That's where the machines actually learn from the interactions. For instance, if you're talking to a chatbot and you might have an accent, right? You may have, it may not initially understand you, but over time, it'll understand your voice, your cadence, the words that you use. Anytime you use Siri or one of these other tools, Alexa or Hey Google, one of these things, over time it gets better at understanding you and how you use language. That's just one example. And then we're going to talk actually a lot today about virtual agents or bots. We use those two terms interchangeably. These are tools that help people interact with their existing data and content. Really, it's just another way, another window, another user interface into content and data. But it's machines that you're dealing with initially. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And one of our favorite things, though, was RPA, which is robotic process automation. We throw that out there because virtual agents are usually used to kick off some sort of robotic process. And this is kind of a fancy way of automating workflow now where machines can actually perform a lot of recurring tasks that people used to do and still do, but can make it better, faster, even cheaper, more accurate, and frees up your people to go and do the other higher value tasks that they might have on their task list.
And that's a growing field of intelligent process automation. And I think AI and machine learning has been fueling the development of RPA. And we're not going to give a demonstration or speak specifically about that, but we wanted to point that out as this kind of new world that's going very rapidly.
All right, we wanted to start out with a poll, and this one is really, Sasha, what are our options?
Are you currently using AI tools? Maybe you're using some, but you need to know more. Maybe you're not using them, but leadership wants to know how to use AI. You're not using right now and you kind of don't have any plans to use it, or you don't know, you're not sure.
So take a second to answer the poll. This helps us a lot to contextualize how we discuss the topics today and how we approach them. So we'll give people a couple of seconds.
Yes, a lot of people are saying they're not using. Some have no plans. Many are intrigued, right?
Yeah, that's pretty common, where you kind of know that you want to use it, you're just not sure how to do it. And that's actually why you should be here today. We're going to give you some examples and some advice on how to do that. So that's pretty much what we accepted. All right, now the other one, now what's this one? This is Office 365 and Microsoft 365 tools, right, Sasha?
Yep.
Yeah, and that's for us, it's good to know because a lot of what we're going to talk about can be deployed easily and built on a Microsoft 365 or Office 365 platform and Azure to a certain degree. So if you're not on it, certainly moving to it will enable a lot of AI capability that are built in the tools. Yeah. And if you're on it, you probably have a lot of capability that leverage AI and machine learning that maybe you don't know about, right? Those exist and are available inside the Microsoft 365 tool set.
It looks about 3/4 of people already in the Microsoft family, so to speak, of tools, which makes our discussion today a lot more meaningful, but also might give you some, if you're not on the platform, you can go ahead and join it at any time and use these tools, even if you're not a existing user.
As a matter of fact, if you are a business of less than 300 employees, Microsoft has a promotion this month.
Right.
For the end of May of giving you a discount of 15% on all the licensing. So if you're interested, certainly reach out to us and we'll guide you in the right direction.
Yeah, we can get you started.
All right, so let's keep moving here. Let's talk a bit about some context about AI, right? When we do those webinars, do those presentations, we like to poll the audience as well. And what we learn is there's both excitement and a huge amount of fear about artificial intelligence, right? This poll that was done about 3 months ago, it says Wednesday, but it was back in October of last year, showed that, Americans in general have a lot of optimism about the emerging technology, but also at the same time, a fear of very much negative impact, right? Dale, and I think we see that, the same percentage of people are very enthusiastic, very positive, as much as they have a negative opinion of the risk of the technology. And why is that?
I think a lot of it is because they're not quite sure what the tools do and what they're really good at. So it's easy for us to think about self-driving cars. It's easy to think about maybe even automation in an airplane. You mentioned that you like to fly. But what we're talking about are really things that are going on in a business, right? And especially tasks, recurring tasks or decisions that need to be made, and they're kind of routine. They need to be done fast. They need to be done accurately. And actually, people get worried that it might replace a person. But really what is happening, in fact, we see this in businesses where we're deploying these tools, is that it lets your staff do the higher value things. It augments their role in the organization rather than replace. That's what we're seeing.
Right. What if you had a tool in Outlook that will remind you that there was a few emails from 2 days ago that you forgot to respond to? Well, guess what? It exists. It's there. It's called My Analytics in Office 365, and if it's turned on, you can be viewed on a daily basis, and it will just remind you that you forgot to reply to this person about this subject, and maybe that was wrong. That was not the right action, and you can tell the system, no, this was not a task. So this continuous machine learning will evolve, right? So those are the type of things that AI is meant to do. I think the risk is misuse of artificial intelligence, right? And I think all the large software manufacturers, specifically Microsoft, Google, and IBM, have created a consortium to think about how we're going to monitor the use of our tools, and how do we ensure that they're not misused, right? Because that's the biggest risk here that we see. And I think the fear is very much about misuse of the tool or direct elimination of labor as a result of using AI.
So what's interesting, though, is we have definitely reached an inflection. Everyone likes to talk about how rapidly technology is developing, how quickly new tools are being deployed, but it's actually true. It's not just hype.
It is, and I think, a lot of people ask us why now, right? So why, I studied computer science in the late 80s, early 90s. That tells everyone how old I am. I remember taking a class on artificial intelligence, right? So those concepts of AI are not new. And what's new is the ability to actually execute, right? Back in late 80s and early 90s, you just didn't have the massive amount of computing power, the massive amount of data, and the massive amount of algorithm to do that. And that's really what has changed, right? Technology and idea of AI has been around almost since the late 1800s, right? Has evolved over time. The first self-driving car was invented in 1994, right? So it's not new. What has happened over the last probably 5 to 6 years is this convergence of a massive amount of compute power. We're talking about cloud technology has given everyone, all of us here in this call, in this webinar today, the ability to have massive amount of computing power at our fingertips. At the same time, we have the ability now to store and manage and process huge amount of big data. Why is machine learning and AI so prevalent today is that we have now data, right, that can be used to teach a machine to learn and to get better over time, right? And that's the advances in big data.
And I liked what you said. I think really, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, is these tools are now available to everybody.
Yeah.
So this massive capability is not just for very wealthy companies, right? Any company, really, it's as simple as having a credit card and understanding how to use these tools.
That's right. And the last piece of the inflection point is the powerful algorithm, right? So the ability to have ways to process this big data, cost a large cost of computing power using AI algorithm that often are open source and available to anyone to tap into.
All right, so let's get to the meat of this. So how do we get started? And Daniel and I thought a lot about this is, how do we give practical advice on how to start leveraging some of these tools? And that's exactly what we're here to do today. So one thing we thought we would do is start talking about in detail about how other companies are doing it. Where do they start deploying AI? And where are they? And what are they actually doing? And this is kind of the entry level, if you will, way to start leveraging actually very advanced tools. So that's really what we're up to here. So go ahead. All right, so where are other companies? All right, where are these tools actually being deployed? And there's really a few ways. You'll see we have up there's ways to engage with your customers. I bet you almost everybody on the call today has, maybe with a cable company or maybe the airline, you start typing in something into a little chat box. Almost always, that's now a robot, right? It's a virtual agent or a bot, as we call them. And it's just a way of people to interact with your service staff or some part of your firm. But you can flip that around, and it helps your own employees find data, find other people, find expertise, do things. And so while we've all engaged with a bot, maybe with a company on the outside, internally, more and more people are instead of getting on a web page, they're actually engaging with some sort of virtual agent or bot to find information or to file some of their the reports or get information from HR, for instance.
To the same token, I think that those same technology can be used internally, right? So we talked about how to better engage your customers. Obviously, for many organizations, is how to better engage your employees, right? How to make your staff more productive, how to tap into your organization knowledge. And I think bots and AI is one of those new capabilities that are meant to improve productivity and efficiency inside the workplace as well.
Yeah. And on the right-hand side, a lot of firms will use AI. In fact, we mentioned robotic process automation. That's really optimizing current operations. Maybe you have people entering data or getting data from one system and putting it into another. There are AI tools out there that do that. That's kind of process automation, RPA, robotic process automation, as we call it. So that's very common common use of the technologies. And then we all know that companies are trying to transform a product. Maybe just think about Siri, right? One of the first things, you're interacting with your phone, so the product has been enhanced, right? And now these other virtual agents that we all have in our houses. So where do we think people ought to start, and where do we see people actually starting to use these tools? It's really on the engaged customers or employees side of the house. Wouldn't you say, Daniel?
Yeah, definitely.
And so virtual agents or bots, I'll probably have to stick to one term here or the other, but they're really the same thing, okay? So virtual agent or a bot, you can use you pick what you want to use. Some people are more comfortable using virtual agent because remember what we talked about earlier.
It's really about chat bots, right?
They're chat bots, and also people get scared about talking about robots, right? But anyway, whatever nomenclature, we're using them interchangeably. But we think it's an effective method to interact with your existing content and data. This is a common misnomer, is that you have to go out and create new content and data to make one of these things work. And that's not the case. While certainly there's going to be some programs, some stitching together of content and data, the idea here is that you're interacting with your existing content and data. It's just a new way, a new user interface to get at that stuff faster, more efficiently, and free up, remember we said earlier, augment your internal staff to go do the more productive and higher value activities that they have on their plate. And there's the augmentation thing. So again, this is really going to help people do more. But again, this is a practical thing, and that's the name of the webinar, the practical way to get started. This is the easiest way to do it. This is one of the easiest ways to get started.
There's a couple ways. One is to understand what of your tools today have AI built in, right? I mentioned Outlook. I mentioned, in the previous webinar, we talked about PowerPoint and Excel having built-in AI capability. I think most of the people have AI at their fingertips. They just don't know about it.
Yeah.
Right. But more importantly, we believe virtual agents, virtual assistants, chatbots is a great place to start, because many people are not used to use Alexa at home, to use Siri on your phone or any other virtual assistant on your mobile phone as well.
Yep. And here's where I think it gets most interesting: is the tools now are just available to be used. You know, we're going to
Some
use
that are easier than others.
Yeah, and we're big fans of Azure.
We're going to talk a lot about the Microsoft platform, and this is truly transformative.
This is really where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. Is that these tools? Everybody on the call today can go start using these tools today.
Right. And what's interesting, we're going to talk about the different type of virtual assistant and bots, but I want everyone to use their imagination here. Right? A bot is not just a machine that is programmed to answer some questions and give answers. Right? A bot can now go tap into your backend system. What if you had a bot in your organization with the sole purpose of helping everyone in your firm or your company to easily retrieve how much paid time off they have left, right? That's always a challenge. You don't know where to go, right? Well, what if you went to the bot and say, hey, bot, I need to know what my PTO is. The system will reach out to the backend system, retrieve the data, and present it to you all securely. Bot knows who you are, and give you that information as well.
And then it might then ask you, do you need to schedule time off?
Exactly. It take you for that process. So think about bots as obviously the basic question and answer. Will take you through a demo to show you things like that. But think about things that can be more sophisticated as well, both from internal function, HR, IT, operation, marketing, finance. I know all of those departments are often bombarded with question and answer.
Routine stuff.
Routine stuff. Oh, again, I think HR is the same thing, right?
Yep.
How do I do this, right? And if those departments start collecting that information, we can now have those tools be deployed inside your organization through Office 365 or your intranet or other means as well. Through texting too, by the way. It doesn't have to be deployed internally. It could be through texting as well. Mm-hmm. So very exciting opportunity as well.
All right, so
go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, so what's involved? And I know, Daniel, this is near and dear to your heart. So, from people just getting started, how should they think about building one of these things?
So, at some point, there's going to be some magic behind the scene, right? You're going to leverage existing services, a bot, if it's a spoken bot or if it's a bot that you type into, right? Will leverage existing services that allows you to process that information. Microsoft called them cognitive services, and that's a good term, right? It's about recognition of either speech, language. You probably may have heard the word NLP, natural language processing, which is the science around detecting what people want to say,
your intent,
what your intent is, and based on your intent, taking an action, right? So those platform services in the top of this screen is really about providing you this capability. And bear in mind, 5 years ago, that did not exist, right? There may have been some open source project there, but that technology just didn't exist. When you think about the world we live in, we have reached amazing milestones in cognitive services recognition. From a vision standpoint, we are close to a 90% accuracy. From a speech recognition, we're close to 85% now, and then those thresholds are growing month after month, right? From the text and language, content understanding, we're close to 79%. And those numbers may not seem great until you know that the human is not at 100%, right? We do vision recognition at about 80% accuracy, right? So we know that the computer does better in most cases than a human being. So the platform services are critical to build your virtual agent. You also want to use intelligent tools. We'll demonstrate some of that as well, that are built on top of those platform services. I'll demonstrate today a tool from Microsoft called Q&A Maker, which is a very simple tool to create a simple question and answer knowledge base that you can publish in a bot inside your organization. virtually without writing a line of code. And that's so it says code here. It's a little misleading here. So Q&A Maker is one example. Lewis is another tool that Microsoft has built that focus on language understanding and intent, right? When you say a sentence, either you say it or you type it, same results, right? You're often meant or intend to say something. You want an action based on that questions, right? And Lewis is a tool that allows you to create rules and train a system to understand your intent.
And it should get better over time.
It gets better over time because you train it, you recover, you monitor, and you keep teaching the system. Right? It's a platform. It has to know your content. You have to feed it your content. And obviously, in the beginning, maybe at 70% accuracy, and after you train it, you get to 80, 90% accuracy quickly as well. And then at some point, you may need some code written, right? So if you want to have a bot that has a conversational and business logic that connects to other system, right? Mm-hmm. You can take and write codes, or you can use what's called a low-code, no-code tools by third-party companies that integrate with Azure Bot Logic. We work with one of our partners called AdBot, who developed a great platform. But so look at the big platform like Microsoft and Amazon and Google to come up with better low-code, no-code approach in the next few months as well.
So it just makes it easier for business people to go out and build exactly what they want.
Yeah.
So again, why is it so important? They're accessible to everybody, and the capabilities are super advanced. I mean, just 2 years ago, a lot of these things were in their infancy, and now it seems like every month there's a new capability rolled out. Right. So of course, keeping up with that's hard as well.
And by the way, we don't have to build or select the algorithm to do natural language processing. Microsoft has done, or Amazon, or whoever you want. I mean, they have similar in IBM capability. We have to leverage their service, and that's a service we can tap into. Obviously, it's not free. You have to pay. It's consumption-based, right? So there's a cost to use that service from any of those providers. But at the end, it provides you all the intelligence you need. And it takes advantage of this huge amount of machine learning they've done. Imagine, Azure has been being used by almost 400,000 developers now from a bot framework perspective. They all have trained those systems. They get better over time, and they're going to keep getting better, of course, as time goes on.
So as Daniel's going to show us in a few minutes, and this is kind of a summary of what he just said, there's things called there's a bot service in Azure. There are cognitive services to even make those virtual agents even more powerful. That's the vision, speech, language, just understanding of what your intent is and what it needs to do for you. And then, again, that ability for it to get better is where the machine learning piece comes in.
And in most cases, most organizations will not touch this, right? It's behind the scene, but there may be cases where you are a manufacturing company that has, some IoT sensor all over the place, and you want to leverage that data to potentially predict a failure of a machine, right? The machine collects huge amount of data, you collect that information, and you want to use that and create a model to detect possible failure down the stream, so you know when to service an upcoming machine. This sounds very futuristic, but everyone can do that today with Azure Machine Learning, right? And those are capabilities that are available in the platform too.
Yep.
All right.
Are we ready? Here's where the magic happens.
So, I want to present quickly another slide here and talk a little bit about some of the capability here, right? So, on the left-hand side, we can see the user input, right? So input can be from text, from speech, from images, but there's a user that comes in and through a specific channel, right? The channel can be Teams, can be Slack, can be Skype, can be text. For a given channel, the user will either talk or send a command to a bot. And that's where the bot intelligence comes in. I mentioned a couple of things. The first one was Q&A Maker, right? So this is a tool here that essentially allow you to create simple question and answers capability where you can create and train a system to be very smart to answer questions, right? So let's take, for instance, if you're business challenge is freeing up your HR departments from answering the same question over and over. How do I access my 401k? I don't know what it is. Click that URL and go log in type of questions, right? Which I'm sure all of you are facing every day. You know, Q&A Maker is the place to do it, right? Q&A Maker is where you're going to train that. It's a user interface. I'm going to demonstrate that shortly. If you want to do something more sophisticated, where you want to have complex language understanding, for instance, I would like to hear the news around Microsoft 365. Right? That's an interesting sentence here. One, there's an intent. I need the news. And then there's a news about what? Office 365, right? So that's where you need a platform that can understand your intent and then your patterns as well as your entities that you're trying to do. That's Lewis. That's the language understanding. I'll show you how that's set up. And lastly, you need something to manage your dialogue. Right? What's going to happen? What do you start? Right? That can be coded, or you can use local, no-code platform to do that. I'm not going to demonstrate too much of that. I'm going to focus on the Q&A Maker language understanding. Then I'll show you a finished part here on how the end results was all tied together.
Right.
Make sense?
In the Q&A Maker, there actually is a tool in Azure to go and do this.
Yes. That's a different view as well. Again, very focused on the Microsoft approach to creating bots and conversational. That's another term that's used often. Conversational, interface, right? All right. So let's get into bot here. All right. So I'm first going to go to Q&A Maker, right? So that's a service that essentially leverage a cognitive services behind the scene from Microsoft. This is a tool where I've created a few knowledge base, right? This is a IT knowledge base that we've created. You see that this has different things, what the source is. By the way, the source means that we pointed this knowledge base to an existing Microsoft Q&A page, right? Now you can do that, or you can create your own question and answer, right? So let me ask a question here. What is Microsoft 365? And I'm going to put an answer here. Microsoft 365 is a bundle of tools from Microsoft, which includes Office 365, EMS, and Windows 10. Right? Now, maybe there's several questions that can get you here, right? I am looking for a tool to manage my own business. And I'm going to add one more question. How can I purchase Office 365? There we go. So I have three questions that lead to the same answer here, right? So essentially, I create this. Again, you don't have to start from scratch. You can use Excel. You can use existing database. You can link them to existing web pages, right? The tool does a phenomenal job in parsing up even large PDFs or documents, right? Of course, if you give it a simple PDF or document, you're going to have to massage the response, right? And so forth as well. But at some point, I'm going to save and train the system. What training means is that it's going to go out and take all the knowledge that Microsoft has accumulated around natural language processing to ensure that there's a clear understanding of the question and answer, and that we can derive the right intent from this question as well. Now, that's great. This is, again, the administrative interface here. I've not published this, right? I'm just showing you how you create your knowledge base, but I can test it from here, right? So what is Skype for Business? And you see here that I asked a question, there was an answer, my IT help desk came back and gave you the proper answer. Now, you may say, you know what, that wasn't quite the right answer that I wanted you to do. Here is what you should have gone, right? You see that this came up with a score of about 76%. maybe there was a better answer here, or you're typing one on the fly. When someone's asked that question, Skype for Business is a instant messaging tool. There we go. So now I'm going to say and click and say, this is the right question. I'm going to save and train, and I'm going to go back, right? So this is my knowledge base built out, right? So when we say those tools are available to everyone, with an Azure subscription, in this case, you have to create a Q&A maker, link it. It requires a little bit of Azure understanding here, but now I can come back and ask a question, and I train my system, and the system now took the right answer, right? Because I trained and gave the right answer here for the system as well.
So it's able to use all these other advanced tools behind the scenes to make
That's
it
right,
better.
right. So again, that's Q&A maker. Simple question, simple answer, right? Remember, there's no dialogue, there's no decision tree here. It's only question and answer, right? But for many organizations, this is a huge improvement, right? They will take away the standard Q&A, and when we implement bots, you know, often 30 or 40% of the scenarios are about just Q&A, and then 60% are more complex down behind the scene as well. Now, let's say that you wanted to have a dialogue with a bot that requires to understand your language. So what we did here is created and used an application called Lewis, which again, use the cognitive services. Think that this has an interface, right, for you to create a set of intents, and for each intent, define entity, and how and what questions will do. And it used the same concept of Q&A maker, which is about testing, training, and publishing the results. What's interesting too as well is Microsoft has recognized that a lot of times people want to do bots that have the same capability. Maybe you want to do a bot to understand appointment settings, or want to do a bot that understands events, right? Or a bot that understands home automation or device or music, right? So they're giving us predefined domains here that we can add to my Lewis database, right? And that's great, because what you're going to see here when I've added this domain, and I have a lot of intent already done and trained for me, right? So for instance, if I wanted to look at this, I can look at this intent and say, you know, those are the sentences that people will use when they want to call someone, right?
And these are constantly updated.
Right, those are pre-built domain, right? But if I go back here and say, you know what, I wanted to look at the one-on-one news that we created here that we're going to use for our demonstration here. Let's say that I wanted a simple bot, right? That, and we've created that this morning here. It's bring your child today here in the US. So I brought my son Harry here, and I showed him how to create this, and he was really excited about it, about that as well. But essentially, this is a simple bot. So we're trying to do understand your intent, right? So let's say that you wanted to learn about news about Microsoft, right? There's a lot of ways you can ask the question, right? And you don't know how people will ask what they mean, right?
And they may not want to sit there and search the web all day.
Right. So what we model here is what are the different ways that someone may want to ask this simple question, right? So for instance, let's say I wanted to add here an example. I am interested to learn something new about Microsoft. Right, so I've loaded what's called an intent, right? And now you can see here that this is going to be used by Lewis to train the model to understand how are we going to recognize when someone intends to ask for a news item.
Because people may ask for the same thing differently.
Right. Now you see here that when I highlight on here, things get highlighted. Why? Because now I can link a intent to what's called an entity, right? Why? Because in this case, our bot will be smart enough to say, I can recognize what kind of news you want, right? And the bot would essentially send you to a search engine to find out about this particular topic, right? So we've created an entity called news about, which is can be passed to the bot to detect someone have asked for news about something. And this news about is used by different intent, right? What is new with X, Y, and Z? What's new with X during that time? News, Microsoft News, right? So there's several ways you can do that as well. Bottom line, I'm going to train my system here. And the training means it's taking the data, it's taking all the information I gave it to him to allow me to now start asking questions too. Now, I'm going to remove this domain here because when you add a lot of content here, you have to retrain and retest everything. And that could take a while. And that could take a while. All right, so I'm going to focus on everything. So we have two intents, right? Get my news, and then I'm not interested on anything else, none, right? So that's what our bot does. So I can come here and ask, I need to know more about Office 365. Right? And we're saying here that with a 95% confidence, the bot or Lewis thinks that this should be the get Microsoft News intent. Great, it's working. Now I can come here, change it. Imagine if you have multiple intents, you can redirect people. So, this is the part where, like Q&A Maker, Lewis will work magically to a certain degree, but at some point there's this human that comes in and teach the system, train it over time. And then, by the way, your bot will collect logs, and you can learn that people keep asking that question, and so forth as well.
What I think is neat, though, is that you do this and use it with an interface. You don't need to be a hardcore developer to do this, right? You need to understand what you want the system to do.
Yeah.
Then you just learn how their tool
More advanced capability include topic pattern matching, and then the new one that Microsoft just recently added is called sentiment. Lewis can detect if someone was angry, happy, not, and detect kind of your feeling during this as well. So you can take specific action on your bot. All right, so that was
how to build it.
How to build it, right? Now there's some magic that has happened. I'm going to demonstrate here another bot here. So I have a bot in a SharePoint site here, right? So this is the chat bot here. The bot has a help, so I can ask for some help here. And the help would tell me, oh, you first need to log into Office 365. That's great. I'm going to log myself in here. And question here, now that I'm logged in, I should be able to ask the question again, right? So you see that this bot is interactive here, right? It can get some help. It can ask about news. It can submit a business expense, connect to a printer, or request to use vacation or sick leave. Now this bot has some skills, right?
And you can make it, again, you decide what you want these questions or these tasks that need to be accomplished.
So I can type maybe a simple word news. Now, this was sent to Lewis, and Lewis detected that you're interested maybe in a topic. Let's see, I'm interested in Office 365. Now, what is the bot doing? And that's some magic behind the scene here, right? I'm not showing you how we built this, right? Because that requires, to go in the back end and create some rules and dialogues. But Lewis told me, hey, you're interested, your intent is to create news. We're not going to send this to a Bing search, right? It's going to search for that topic, Office 365, and return to you the 5 most relevant new articles around Office 365, right?
It could have just as easily been trained to look at your own internal information.
Yes. And I can search, and to show you that within a hard code thing, I can give a different topic here, and I'll get different results here as well. Of course, Microsoft just released their quarterly earnings yesterday, so lots of news is around how they did, how well Microsoft has done over the last quarters and for their fiscal year as well. So that's an example of a simple Q&A that not just do question and answer, that leverage the language understanding to understand your intent, to send this to another Azure services, to search the web and get your results, right? Now, what if I wanted to submit an expense report, right? Sure, I can have something in Q&A Maker that sends me to the right place. Or we can have a bot that will walk you through this process and submit this. What did you make a purchase? A new computer.
Probably ask when.
When, sorry, yeah. Yesterday, sorry, you see. Okay, yesterday was the 4/24, that's confirmed. What did you purchase? Now I purchased a new computer. How much did that cost? This was a very inexpensive computer. Thank you, and now your expense report has been submitted as well, right? And then if I needed to, if in my cell phone, I could just put a picture here. This was added to my expense report. Sure, I can go and log into my expense reporting system, assuming I remember my password and where it is, or I can just interact with this bot too.
And this is a great example of RPA, right? So you're interfacing with a little bot, but it's then going out and spawning and kicking off a bunch of other activities, so you don't have to go and do it. It does it for you.
All right. Okay, I can't connect to my printer. Okay, so I wanted to do something else here and show you that now you can have a system that will even take you to connecting your printer. So that's an IT bot, right? In this case, you know, I'm looking at a color printer. Now, what is the bot doing? It's smart. It knows where you are because the bot is connected to Office 365. Office 365 knows I'm in Bethesda, Maryland today, and asking me, yeah, it looks like you're there. Is that what you want to print? Now, what are we going to do here? The system will try to look for a printer in Bethesda, and if it found one, we'll show it to you. If not, it gives you the instruction on how to do it, right? So again, that was a Q&A bot that has some capability here. You've seen that it doesn't look great because we put this demo very, very quickly, but then it waited and say, hey, were you able to get it done? And I'm going to say yes, right? So essentially, I replaced the need to contact my IT department and open a ticket and so forth, right? So those are simple examples of bots. Again, some of those can be done with no code, with Q&A Maker. Some will require to set up Lewis and maybe use, you know, a third-party platform or use the Microsoft, you know, a bot framework, which will require some scripting and coding as well. But many of that can be done, you know, within days or weeks.
And I think you said something important. You can make it look, there's a lot of flexibility in how the bot looks. And so you can, you know, brand it. You can even maybe come up with its own unique identity. There's lots of different things you can do with the look and feel of the actual bot itself.
That's right.
So we talked a lot about the advanced capabilities. We just did, you know, touched on a few things. But as you mentioned earlier, your bot can recognize who you are. It recognizes things. It can recognize different languages. And more, I think what we're seeing is it can extract knowledge from all the content that it has access to. So it can answer questions a lot more accurately and even more than a person, because then a person doesn't have to go and read all the information that you may be asking a question about. So we're seeing search and these types of things being a very common bot model, if you will.
Yeah, and we're not using bots as a way to introduce organization to AI just because it's a natural language. I think, you know, most folks have gotten used to using some sort of virtual assistant, mostly on the consumer side at home, and bringing that to the enterprise with chatbots has potential to free up a lot of, you know, wasted labor and just answering the same questions over and over. Yeah.
All right, so just review a little bit about the steps. So, you know, we kind of went quickly, but you really need to know why you need a bot or what you want the bot to do. So that just takes people figuring out where are the high value things that a bot could help our people do things faster, better, cheaper, whatever.
And when we've seen great success is to create bot with a purpose, right? You don't want a generic bot. Maybe you have an Ask IT bot. And the purpose and only purpose of that bot is to self-serve people from an IT perspective. Maybe you have an Ask HR bot. If you make a bot too generic, it becomes hard because it lacks purpose today, right? So think about why you need a bot, but also give it a purpose.
And then in the middle, we have understand your data and your content. So, you know, what we mean by that is if you're a Microsoft shop, it probably makes sense to use the Azure-based bot tools that are out there, because it'll know who you are. The whole interface, identity management will be seamless. But even you need to know how to connect to the other systems. Let's say you have a financial system or a HR system. You just need to know how to connect to those things so the bot can leverage them. So there is some IT awareness, if you will, depending on what the bot needs to do. But more than ever, though, you still need to have that basic understanding of what these tools do and what one to use to do what. And that can be a little daunting, frankly.
It is, and I think that's where we can help, right? I think a lot of our prospective clients or even existing clients come to us and help us and ask us to help them and guide them in the right direction as well.
So just a few benefits that we see and we are seeing, because we're actually building these things for our customers right now. We actually see our customers being able to have their people focus on the higher value things. We have a customer that has a lot of recurring requests for marketing material. The bot's actually going to go out there and be able to retrieve these files from people from the self-service, so they don't have to have someone constantly on the phone doing that. Just one example. But all these recurring things that you might be doing, these routine tasks, might make a lot of sense to have the bot do it instead of a person.
And the bot can be deployed, like I said, in a lot of different channels, right? I think for many organizations, it could be a web page on your intranet. It could be texting. If you have a lot of people outside of the organization that are familiar with texting, you can have your own channel where you interact with your bot with texting. It could be through the use of Microsoft Teams, which is now a very common used tools. It could be with Skype for Business, where you had a channel and you talk to someone that's a bot in Skype Consumer or Skype for Business as well.
Right. So, we do think, and we're seeing it ourselves, and that's anecdotal for sure, but when people are able to quickly find and do things, they're happier. So if your bot is actually, pretty good and pretty smart, it can get those leave balances, it can get the time off schedule, it can do all that stuff without taking as much time as it used to. Right? And I think, this is a huge benefit. This is what I think is transformative, and these things have never been easier to use and deploy.
It is getting easier, on a quarterly basis. I think we're going to be here a year from now saying, there's no reason not to, because it's that easy a few point on clicks. Yeah. Today, it still requires some better understanding of the Azure framework and platform, and maybe have a developer involved here and there. Tomorrow, it's going to be less and less friction deployment. And I think, again, one huge benefit we've seen is improving, employee satisfaction and user experience.
Yeah.
Right? That's where we see bot having a huge potential downstream.
Mm-hmm. All right. And Sasha, you're up.
Thank you very much. That was informative. So we just like to leave you guys with an offer. Not me, but Daniel and Dale coming in and doing a proof of concept for bots to really show you the value and what you can do and how it can benefit your business.
Yeah.
So once we send the recording out with the slide deck, you'll be able to sign up on that.
Yeah, and the idea here is we're very excited about this. We've been spending a lot of time with prospective clients. We want to come in, maybe give you a better demonstration, but discover one or two use case, show you and build you an example of a bot that solved one of your business challenge, show you how we can do that. We can do that within, a half a day, come in and quickly build a proof of concept of something very useful for your organization.
Yep.
Good.
Do we have any questions?
I think you guys did a very good job. We do not have any questions.
We've answered most of the questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that was really good. So if anyone does have any questions, we'll be sending a follow-up email with the recording and the slide deck. If anything comes up, please reach out to us. We're always here to help. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks.
Have
Bye
a
now.
good day.